You poured a glass of wine tonight because you earned it. You earned it after the attorney's calls, the parenting schedule, the mediation prep, the text from your ex that sent your heart into your throat. But here's the question nobody's asking you. What if the thing that you're using to survive this divorce is the thing keeping you from surviving it? My guest today is got sober 32 years ago, and she says the women who needs her most aren't at rock bottom. They're at the kitchen table, high functioning, they're quietly losing themselves one glass at a time. 32 years ago, Arlina Allen made a decision that would rewrite the entire trajectory of her life. She put down the drink and picked up a mission. So today she helps high-performing entrepreneurs and professionals overcome addictive behaviors, master stress, and break through the resistance that keeps them stuck, not with willpower, not with shame, but the neuroscience, mindfulness, and the kind of self-leadership that turns rock bottom into a launch pad. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, your host. And wow, today's going to be a busy day. We've got 3 podcasts back to back to back today. So make sure you check in. We've got 3 different kind of guests. And I always tell people, look, if you're going through a divorce, if you have family and friends going through a divorce, please check in because there's always resources. I'm connecting with people around the country who have resources for you to thrive, not just survive through a divorce, but really thrive through a divorce. I know that it is something that a lot of people, I get calls every single day from people who are in panic. And I'm just like, okay, if there's one thing that I can do, a couple things that I can do with this podcast is bring you resources that are going to help you get through it and get through it strong, or also just to give you hope that there is life after divorce. And today's show is actually going to be a little bit more personable on my side, because sometimes I may not have used alcohol, but I talk about this on this podcast a lot, that my drug of choice, which caused me to get into recovery, was food. And a lot of people don't even take that seriously, but I've been in recovery for over 16 years and released 130 pounds, maintaining that and still working my recovery. I was just telling our guest today that I called my sponsor this morning, and it's a beautiful community and it's a beautiful thing. And what you may or not know or do know about recovery, just stay open today, because you never know. You never know. You might be able to save someone's life or even your own. So with that, Arlina, I was going to say, is our guest today, is the founder of Sober Life School. She's also the host of the One Day at a Time Recovery podcast, top 1% globally, and the bestselling author of the 12-Step Guide for Skeptics. She's been sober since April 23rd, 1994. And if you're in recovery, you know that those dates are important. And she's here to tell you why recovery isn't about losing your edge. It's about finding it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love it. I love being able to have other podcasters on the show. It's fun because we just get to riff. Right?
Yeah. And we love to talk, so that's fun.
I know, we do love to talk. I love it. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I know that you've been at this industry in helping people for so long. And I'm excited about this conversation just because I'm very, very familiar with 12 step and really what I want to talk really about what the very core part of what causes people to get into addiction. But before we do that, tell everybody kind of a little bit more about your story and what makes you so passionate about being in this space and serving people that you do.
Yeah. So I'll just give you a little backstory where I come from. So I'm from the Silicon Valley area, Sunnyvale, and my parents are very nice people.
So,
Neither
which,
one
by
of
the
them.
way, is I'm from Sunnyvale as well.
That is so funny. I
Grew
don't think
up
I
in
knew that.
Sunnyvale. Did you know that?
I didn't. I knew that you went to a high school that was near my high school,
Oh,
but that's
that's so funny. Yep. Nope. I
hilarious.
grew up my whole life in Sunnyvale. So
Wow. Okay,
anyway,
we'll
that's
have to
cool.
talk a little more later about that because that's so random.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, but so, Sunnyvale's like this all-American happy little town, and, my parents divorced when I was really early, and actually
Mm,
that divorce had a huge impact on me, but there were
mm,
a couple other things that were going on early in childhood.
mm,
I was experiencing abuse by a neighbor,
mm.
and, I think between the combination of the divorce, my parents didn't really have any kind of coping skills. This is a long time ago, right? I'm 57 now, so I
Right.
think I was like 50 years ago. My parents, I think I was about 7 when my parents divorced, but
Mm,
so they didn't have the sort of like information that we have now on how to help your kids if that is, and thank God my parents were always civil to each other, but it was really
mm,
hard on me. And
mm,
combined with the abuse I was experiencing, I had this really negative response to it. I felt like it was my fault. As a little kid, you think everything is your fault somehow.
mhm,
And so that kind of set the stage for me. It sort of defined my self-esteem, how I saw myself in the world. And so, between, and then I started drinking really young, probably a couple of years after that. I think I had a neighbor. I think one of the neighbors, their parents had booze in the house, and I remember, my parents never drank, but there was like this dusty old bottle in the cabinet. And when my mom went out to dinner one night, it was just me and my older sister left home alone.
mm.
Be a great idea to try some of it. And that was my first, and I think I was like 8 or 10, between 8 and 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really young.
I was really young. I don't know why I was so curious about that, but it was
Mhm,
interesting. I'll never forget that experience though, because I
mhm,
remember the booze that touched my lips and it burned all the way down. But when it hit bottom, like I've had this warmth spread through my whole body and all the angst, the self-loathing. I had the self-loathing that young, and felt really bad about it. All that was lifted with this drink.
mm,
And the juxtaposition between feeling really bad about myself and the relief I felt was like burned in my psyche forever. And I chased that feeling for a long time until I was about, I started questioning my drinking at 23 and then finally was able to quit by the time I was 25. I did it through a traditional program because back then there was nothing else. Like there's
right.
lots of different options now.
Well,
And
so I mean, so one of the things that I would think of, did your parents ever find out that you were drinking like that, or
I
was
mean,
it?
I got busted once in junior high. My dad thought, we were all. Do you remember Golfland? I bet you remember
Yes, of
Golfland.
course. I know the people that own it.
Yeah, so
That's so
in junior
funny.
high, we would always go to Golfland on the weekends, and there was a Sunken Gardens was a golf
Yeah.
course right across the street, and there was like this brick wall, and the kids would go behind there and drink and smoke and do all kinds of crazy things, and then go back to Golfland.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it was
gosh.
wild. So
Wow.
yeah, so my dad picked me up one time and I was pretty smashed. And so I was like, yeah, I just wanted to experiment. I don't like it. I'll never do it again.
And so you kind of were able to keep it from, and that's the very core of addiction anyway, right? We like to try to keep it. But did you know that, I mean, as a teenager, did you know that it was a problem, or were you just,
It wasn't a
no,
problem for
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I was just having a good time. I didn't know anything about, I didn't have addiction in my world. Like my
right.
parents didn't drink or anything. I didn't see anybody. It was just not part of my experience. But, some of the kids were experimenting. So I was right in there.
Yeah.
But
Was your sister involved with
no,
that?
no, she was super straight edge. She was like the good girl. I was not. She was the compliant child. I was the rebellious black sheep.
Mhm.
All that. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. But it was just so interesting. Looking back, I've had like decades of therapy and self-examination. I could really see that's kind of where it started. I had some trauma. I had some negative
Yep.
experiences. And what I decided in my mind is that I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
And nobody's coming to help me. When my
Mm.
parents divorced, I was left with my mom and my older sister. My mom was from Mexico City. She was one of like 6 kids, and her mother didn't have any coping skills to teach her. So, she didn't have any to pass along to me. Right.
Right.
So she had, she was either really happy or really angry. And I felt like she saved her happy face for the outside world. So I was always getting these messages
Mm.
that left me feeling like I wasn't good enough. But this is not to blame anybody. It's just kind of what happened.
Well, and by the way, Arlina, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I've done a lot of self-development work as well. And it's like, if you peel the onion all the way out, it's like right at the very core of it is the self-esteem, or the way
Yeah.
that they see themselves,
Yeah.
and how they don't feel lovable. They don't feel acceptable. They don't, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things that we get there, but, or we want a parent to be proud of us, right? We just want to hear that somebody's sees that we're valuable. And so we end up with all these destructive behaviors. So, I mean, at what point in your 20s, it sounds like you kind of had an awakening. What happened there?
Yeah. I was not one of those that drank moderately. I was like a binge drinker. I didn't drink every day, but when I drank a lot.
Mhm.
And I would have what I would call these episodes where I would go out and, drink to oblivion. I had this thing about me that once I started drinking, I just wanted more. It kicked
Right.
off like a switch, and I just had no off switch. And I
Mhm.
tried to pass it off as I was a fun party girl, the wild and crazy
Mm.
party girl. And that was my persona. And a lot about what we're going to talk about is about around identity.
Yeah.
So my identity was a certain way when I was very young. I took on this identity as a party girl to justify my drinking, but I was experiencing consequences. I put myself in dangerous positions. I was drunk driving. I was
Mm.
blacking out. I'm a small person. I'm
Right.
5'3" and 120 pounds, right? I'm small in stature, so
Right.
we're not fighting, but I was arguing with people.
Mhm. Mhm.
I had a good sense of self-preservation and like with people, not with drunk driving, obviously, but it was just totally out of control. It was nuts.
Right.
And I had an experience. I was like losing friendships. I couldn't hold on to a boyfriend. Oddly enough, I always had like 2 jobs. I was always like working a lot. Like that was one
Mhm.
my thing. I was high
Mhm.
functioning in that regard. I was always working. Pretty strong work ethic, but all
Mhm.
my relationships were in shambles, right?
Mm.
And I was not treating myself very well. And then I just reached this. I had a very bad night. I went out with my sister. We had a really bad night, and I woke up the next day and I was like, "This isn't normal. Like, I
Mm.
need to do something about this." And I had been, but it, by the end of the day, it was like, man, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it
I know
wasn't.
that's the weird thing about addiction. Honestly,
Yeah,
I've experienced that so many times.
yeah,
It's that cycle that you're like, oh, I can't ever do this again, and then all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit better. You're like, you know what, that wasn't too bad. All right, it's like labor, right? I'm
yeah.
like,
Labor.
well, I just thought of that because when people are, I've never had children, but when they're going through that labor, they're like, I'm never gonna have another kid, and then like 10 minutes after they have, they're like, oh, I love this
Yeah,
baby.
you get pain amnesia. And
Yeah. So
I think that's kind of what it was like, in the
yeah.
cycle of addiction is feeling like I never want to do this again. And then I start feeling better. But the tricky part was it's like, maybe I'll just do it different.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to have a glass of water between drinks. Maybe I need to switch
Yep.
from hard alcohol to just beer and wine. Maybe I just need to leave a couple of Advil and a glass of water by my bed at night so I don't have to have a hangover in the morning. Maybe I should eat first. Maybe I shouldn't eat at all. It was like all this. So that 2-year period from sort of like this rock bottom moment to when I actually quit is about 2 years of
Mm.
trying to moderate.
Mm.
And I lived in the self-help
Control it.
section at Barnes and Noble trying
Mm.
to the 7 spiritual laws of success and men are from
Right.
Mars, and I thought money and men were my problem.
Mm.
No, that wasn't the problem. I thought if I could just have the money and the men, then my life would be magical and I wouldn't have to
Yeah.
drink like that. But that wasn't what happened. But I finally came to the conclusion. I met a couple people that were in recovery,
Mhm.
in traditional recovery, and they sort of started introducing me to these mindset shifts. And slowly they were sort of, and it was, and I was also introduced to like Tony Robbins' ideas of like, if you change
Mhm.
your mind, you can change your life. It all starts with
Mhm.
discovering your limiting beliefs, where they come from, how to
Mhm.
reframe those.
Mhm.
And that, and both of these methodologies really talk about identity shaping, reinventing yourself. And that is something, this idea of reinventing yourself, I think, especially for people going through divorce, trauma, heartbreak,
Mhm.
addiction, is a really important thing to consider, because you can actually reinvent yourself and be whoever you want to be. But
Yeah.
for those people who are overly reliant either on, there's really two kinds of addiction. There's process addiction and then there's chemical addiction, right?
So
So
what does that mean? Explain that.
process addiction is like pornography, SLAA, shopping. I would social media.
Mhm.
That's whenever you're getting your dopamine for cheap or easy, that creates a dopamine. Think of it as like a seesaw. I don't know if
Yeah.
you ever read that book, Dopamine Nation. Dr. Anna
Mm-mm.
Lemke wrote
Mm-mm.
this amazing book, and she talks about the seesaw of dopamine. So if
Mm.
you overindulge on cheap or free dopamine, you don't return to homeostasis, you
Mhm.
go below, right? So it's like this seesaw effect. You get really high, you get really low. And that's what
Wow.
happens with alcohol, food, shopping,
Mhm.
pornography, all that stuff. So what we're trying to do is stay away, like what we're really trying to do is identity reshaping, but also emotion management. Like,
Mhm.
what is your story? Like, what is the story that you're telling about who you are
Mhm.
and the effect of the world on you? So it's kind of there's a lot there. I should probably pause to let you ask a question, or I'll just go on and on.
No, no, no. First of all, the thing that just came to my mind too is I think because our society, and this is the question I do have for you, is that I know you've been in this space for a really long time. I mean, do you see addiction increasing? I should say it's just it feels like there's more and more things in our society that we're getting addicted to, like social media. You know,
Mhm.
we are getting those dopamine hits, and it's even more prevalent. And so, I mean, like, first of all, I mean, that's the problem. We can talk about the problem. What's the solution?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. There's all kinds of problems, but there was
Mhm.
this old timer, this wise person that said, doesn't matter what the problem is, the solution is the same. The
Yeah.
solution is simple, it's spiritual, and it has nothing to do with the problem. And
Yeah.
you can substitute that spiritual word for energy or whatever.
Right.
Let me just frame this. The purpose of addiction is distraction. And
Mm.
it begs the question, what
Yep.
are we distracting from? And I would argue that we're trying to distract from feelings that we can't process to resolution, feelings that we don't know how to be present with because they feel so uncomfortable. And that's, everybody that thinks that they don't have addiction, I would say, lock up your phone for a day.
Right.
And
Well,
then your body starts craving that dopamine.
and I like to, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I first got into addiction recovery, I mean, I say the word addict or addiction recovery and people think, oh, it's you're shooting up, on some street. And I'm like, I just like to look at it more as like it's our weakness, it's what we fall to. And I like that you just said that it's our distraction. What is that feeling that you're feeling that you want to distract from or don't want to face?
Yeah, I really come at this through the lens of compassion,
Yeah.
because there is so much in our world and in our lives that is so intense and so negative, and it's coming at us from all angles. And
Yeah.
so we do need relief. We do need ways to cope. And whether you're struggling at a low level with stress, even like I would imagine people are going through divorce, that's high stress,
Yes.
high
Yeah.
trauma, high, like you have to, reinvent your identity. Like, who am I now? Because we typically identify ourselves through our roles
Mhm.
as opposed to attributes. And I would encourage people to start thinking of themselves in terms of attributes. Um, so instead of what you do
Yeah.
or or what your role is. It's like, am I trustworthy, honest, persistent, determined? Am I kind? Am I self-aware? Like those are really the sort of attributes that are more centered in who you really are, as
Mhm.
opposed to what you do. Because a lot of us, especially high functioning, high performing people, we are so self-identified with what we can accomplish, which is very tied to self-worth. It's like your net worth is your self-worth
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. I think a lot of people fall into that trap. And what I really try to do is bring it back to what is the pain that or discomfort or stress that you're carrying, and let's reprocess that in a different way. And I would argue that the tool set that can help people overcome addiction,
Yeah.
man, if you think about just stress management, man, it should be like you should be able to knock it out of the park with, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
if we just apply these tools that handle really hard problems, I'm going to apply it to things that are not life threatening, like it'll accelerate your life and transform you in ways that you actually wouldn't really anticipate.
Well, that is the thing, is when you're going through a divorce, it does feel like it's life threatening. Like it can often feel like, especially if you're dealing with high conflict, and if you're dealing
Yeah.
with someone that's also financially abusing, like you
Right.
went from feeling safe in that regards, and then all of a sudden being dropped, and you have no idea where the next meal is going to come from, or
Yeah.
because I hear these calls all the time. When you what would you say is one of the things that when you're working with people, I know you deal with stress management, right?
Yeah.
What's a couple things that you can share on what you would advise them to do if they find themselves in high stress situation?
I would say don't disregard the power of simple tools, and
Mm,
simple tools like journaling,
yep,
meditating, exercising. A lot of times these tools are either free, cheap, or easy. And
right.
so people tend to devalue them. We tend to value things that are really expensive and hard.
Mhm.
But the simple practices of slowing down, experiencing your feelings in your body, like where is this happening in my body? It's like when we talk about neuroscience in terms of recovery or stress management, I'll just say that the neurology that you develop in a child, like if you had a stressful experience as a child, your neurology develops to respond to that. And it
Mhm.
typically is like overachievement, isolation. I can do this on my own, survival skills, right? And it's fear based. And so when we get into high stress environments as adults, we repurpose those same neural circuits.
Mhm.
So the antidote to that is to use these simple but very practical, very powerful tools that will change the trajectory of how you respond. I would imagine in high conflict, you want to keep your cool in front of the person that is you're divorcing from,
Right.
right? And so if you find that you are responding in a way that's disproportionate to the situation, or in a way that you don't want to, that is a signal that something is unresolved from your past. You develop this neural pathway that's no longer useful to you. And these simple practices are actually a way to start rewiring your nervous system so that you can respond the way you want to. Instead of being reactionary, you can pause and slow down and be thoughtful about your responses instead of reactive.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful ones that I forget all the time is to breathe.
Yeah, for you, yeah. I
Right?
mean, the breath, there you go. It's a simple,
It's so
free,
simple.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and
it's free.
there's a bazillion tools out there. There's EFT tapping, things like yoga, breath work, all that stuff. And we tend to forget them because we dismiss them as, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I can skip it today.
Yeah.
But it's
One of
still,
my first sponsors that I had, and I have shared this on one of the podcasts, but I would always call her in a panic because I was also going through my first divorce during all that. And she'd always say, "Okay, Becky, what do you need to do to take care of yourself in this moment?" And I love that question because it grounds me. It empowers me to know what I need in that moment, instead of telling me what to do,
yeah.
because I don't do well with that. I don't know about you, but I'm like, nah. You're not going to
Yeah.
tell me, but it's wonderful for her to ask me that and then be like, okay, I need to go for a walk, right?
Yeah.
I need to breathe, or I need to go lay down, or I need to do, that has been one of the beautiful gifts of 12 step is for me to learn those things that work for me and then using them.
Yeah. It's
Right.
all about action.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing that is like really critical is validation. We
Yeah.
need to validate our own feelings because
Mhm.
they have a feeling, people want to quickly get rid of it.
Yep.
But what we resist persists.
Yep.
So the best way, if you really want to technically like stop feeling bad, is you have to feel your feelings. You have to feel it to heal it, as they say. You
Mm.
acknowledge, I am really sad. I'm really angry. Where am
Mhm.
I feeling? And it's like you got to kind of talk to yourself. I also do something called internal family systems. And it's a way of really identifying these parts that are inside you that are sort of overreacting.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to get rid of them, you validate the feelings first, and
Mm.
it allows them to relax. When we can validate our own feelings, it allows us to relax. We get back into, our logical minds. When we're under a lot of stress, your prefrontal cortex, your executive functioning goes offline and we go into survival mode. That's reactionary mode. But when we can slow down, we can get calm, then we can come back to our logical thinking. And it's like validating those feelings first instead of denying them or suppressing them or dissociating from them.
Yeah.
That is a really key component in emotion management.
You just reminded me of an activity that I think we did in our first divorce when we were going through therapy. Is every night we had a check-in with our emotions. And
Mm.
it was surprisingly difficult
Yeah.
to like pinpoint how I was feeling, but and especially for men too. I remember having
Yeah.
what was it? It was a wheel of all the
Yeah.
different emotions and saying, okay, why don't you point at what you feel? Like,
Yeah.
but I printed it out and then be like, okay, I feel this. But the beautiful thing about that check-in is that each one of us had to check in and we didn't get to respond at all to how the other person was feeling. It's just like, I feel angry
Mm.
because I feel confused because I feel this. And it was that grounding. And then we would just share and be done with it. And we weren't allowed to go back and argue anything or no, you're not, because I know for me being in a relationship where I was invalidated a lot. Like I say the sky is blue and he would say it was green. I'm like, I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
that I love that you bring that up is validating yourself. And I think sometimes we look for a validation outside of us, but
Yeah.
validating ourselves and going, yes, this is how I'm feeling. That's a
I
really
w
great
I
point.
would also say that what would have been really beautiful is just I'm gonna give you, like, the secret sauce
Yeah.
to de-escalation, is I could see how you'd feel that way.
Right.
I could see any kind of validation, like, it takes courage to be able to say that to the person that you're mad at sometimes, so if, like, you're sharing your feelings with somebody, it's important to be like, okay, yeah, I could see how you'd feel that way. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're agreeing with it. You're like, you don't have to debate it, but people get so defensive and they want to argue about it. And that's what escalates. And then people get loud because
They don't feel heard.
you can't hear me, so I
Right.
must yell at you, but a simple phrase, a pause, a thoughtful question, and I could see how you'd feel that way will absolutely de-escalate the situation.
I'm so glad that you said that because when you were bringing up validation to begin with, the first thought that came to me, because my background's in conflict resolution as well and
Ah,
mediation, it's like they do need to be validated. Like, I love that you just phrased, I can see how you may feel that way.
yeah, it's not an
You know,
agreement.
yeah, it's not agreeing, it's not disagreeing. It's just like, hey, I see you, I
I
feel you, I
see
get
you.
you.
Yeah.
And that does, and I was having a conversation the other day with my husband, my now husband, he's amazing, and talking about the frustration. And it's like, really, I'm frustrated because I want to be heard. I want to know that I'm like, did you
Yeah.
hear me? Did you see me? Did you?
Yeah.
And I think that is a human. I think it starts with yourself, and then I love that you brought up the fact that in any conversation, to be able to validate that I see
Yeah, we have
you.
to be willing to demonstrate the behavior that we want to receive as well. And
Mhm.
sometimes it takes a little bit of courage and to be able to set your pride aside and just be like, let me just see if I understand what you're trying to say to me.
Mhm.
Because it is that human need. Every human wants to be seen, heard, and understood.
Mhm. Yep.
And if we're talking about conflict resolution, we need to de-escalate. And that's so far, I mean, I'm sure there's other ways, but that's worked. Like, listen, I've been with my husband the entire time I've been sober. He's still my favorite person because we have found this through, in the 12 steps. The fourth step is a searching and fearless moral
Yep.
inventory of ourselves. And
Yes.
then we get to understand under every resentment, like what our part was. And every relationship has a 50-50 shared responsibility. So if I can identify what I could have done different, what was driving my behaviors, then I can start thinking about how I can behave differently. And that's taking really personal responsibility and without worrying about what they did to
Right.
provoke me. It's like I'm solely focused on what is my part, personal responsibility, extreme responsibility. And meanwhile, my husband's doing the same thing. And over the years, when we've had conflict, we go through this process of what was my part? What can
Mhm.
I do different? And then make amends to the other person. And that has been like a resentment resolver, dissolver. So that someone just asked me the other day, like, oh, you guys have been married. Do you have any resentments left? I'm like, none. Like I can't think of a damn thing that I'm not holding on to anything. All my resentment has been resolved.
Well, it's because you have the tools and the ability. And that's one thing I think people misunderstand about 12 step is it is really an opportunity for you to take ownership of your own stuff
Yeah.
and leave what doesn't work for
Yeah.
you and be able to keep that resentments clean. And I remember several
Yeah.
years ago, I was having a conversation with someone that was in 12 steps. She was in a different program, but she says, resentment leads to all addiction. And I was like, and even, falling off the wagon and slipping or whatever they say is that it's the resentment. And I was thinking, wow, okay, so where in that world is it's I love the tools to be able to evaluate all of those resentments and go, okay, let's clean them up, because you can clean them up quickly, right? And be able to
Yeah.
take ownership and still have boundaries there
Yeah.
and be able to move forward.
I do want to just clarify something. So the book I wrote is, the 12-step guide for skeptics, but the
Yeah.
tagline is clearing up common misconceptions of a path to sobriety. So it's not the
Yes.
path, but it's a path.
Tell
And
me more about that.
in the very beginning of the book, I talk about meetings and the program are two separate things. Sometimes people go, I went to a few AA meetings. I didn't like it. So I quit. It's not for
Right.
me.
Right.
And I'm like, that's interesting. That's not the program. You
Mhm.
totally threw the baby out with the bathwater. The steps are like a homework, in the
Mm.
book, the last several pages are the exercises, which are
Mm.
it's largely a writing self-reflective
Right.
exercise, right? It helps you to see clearly, break through your own limiting beliefs. It helps you to identify what your patterns are, what you can do different. It opens you up to sort of, spirituality, religion, whatever, however, energy, however you think about that. It's like, what can I be open to that can help me? It's just like a
Mm.
willingness to receive help, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's from another person or, they talk about God a lot in 12 steps and people freak out about that. And I would just say that that is really just, it can be like in 12 steps, they call it a group of drunks or good
Mhm.
orderly direction. It doesn't have to be a religious or spiritual thing. I feel like there's magic in the world. I've had too many amazing, miraculous things happen for me to like be like, that's not a thing. It's totally a thing.
Yeah.
I just can't fully describe it. But um, some of the misconceptions are, the powerless over alcohol.
Mhm.
But people get hung up on the word powerless. And what I would say is that that's an incomplete phrase. It's powerless over alcohol.
Mhm.
It's not over everything. You're not
Right.
powerless over everything. Um, and
Ooh, I
what
like
that,
I like that thought for just a second. I'm like, because I know before I got into 12 step, it was all about the, self-development. You are powerful. You can do anything and you can, and so it was a
yeah,
little hard for me to go, I'm powerless, but I like that you said I'm powerless
over.
over this one thing,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I think in every program, they identify the thing that you have lost the ability to choose
yeah.
your ability to choose. Really, really, what they're taught powerlessness is a lack of ability to choose. Like I lost my ability to choose whether I was going to drink or not.
Mhm.
Right. So that's what we're talking about. We're not saying that you're powerless over everything. I was a high
Right.
functioning alcoholic. I had like multiple jobs. I was making
Yeah.
money. I was, doing all this stuff. So, but that's not it. That's the misconception. People go, they see the word powerless, they get rebellious, defensive, and they're like, I'm out. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not the whole thing. That's
So
why it's important to talk to somebody who understands what they are so they can explain the whole thing.
yeah. So, and I know that you work with, I mean, you've worked with you've mentioned several times, and I wonder, I'm like, okay, this is probably why she works with them, is high achieving women. You work with women and men or just women?
I do. I got some
Okay.
CEO guys
Oh, good.
that I cannot disclose, but
Of course. But you do
yeah.
work with, so talk a little bit about like what type of people that you work with. And
I love the
we
high functioning hard chargers because
yeah,
so there's kind of two people in two camps. People that sort of are stuck in this victim mentality who
yeah.
are kind of repeating this powerlessness story, their
Mhm.
victim story, right? And
Mhm.
I'll just preface this by saying, um, there are victims in the world. I'm not
Yep.
saying that they're not. And there is an appropriate space for processing those feelings to resolution, validation,
Mhm.
acknowledgement, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I have seen people get lost there. And
Yeah.
so I'm one of those people who be like, okay, let's keep it moving. Let's
Mhm.
identify where your power is. But it's very difficult to get somebody to assume responsibility. It's way easier in the other camp, the high achievers. These people are hyper responsible.
Yeah.
And so those people, my work is to get them to back off of responsibility because they're taking
Mm.
responsibility for
Too
everybody and
much. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I'm alone and nobody can come help me.
Yeah.
Right. No, why doesn't anyone ever check on me? People don't check on their strong friends because their strong friends are always acting like everything's fine.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I
Well,
like the high achievers because they have really strong survival skills. They just don't translate into healthy relationships.
they struggle with the relationships, which is what relationship with theirself first, right?
Yes,
And having
because
boundaries.
a high-powered high achiever is denying their own feelings.
Mm.
That's what helps them to get shit done. That's what makes them
Mhm.
so productive and accomplished is they can deny and dissociate from their own feelings and
Mm.
their own needs to get stuff done for others. Like they're
Mm.
assuming so much responsibility, they completely shut down their own humanity.
Yeah.
And so if you're not acknowledging your own needs, well, how can you identify somebody else? How can you communicate what you need to somebody else if you're completely dissociated from your own needs?
I know that's crazy. Well, and I think so. I love that you do that, and you also have, just as we're kind of wrapping up too, is that you also have a course on self esteem. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's called Reinvent Yourself. And I would imagine this would be great for your audience
Perfect.
because when you are letting go of this identity of a role, whether it's a
Mhm.
wife, a spouse, or a job or whatever, you're having to sort of reinvent yourself. Who am I going to be now?
Right.
Right. And so it's a 6-week class. You show up live online because we tend to show up for others. This is like the high achiever
Yep.
um, catnip, it's like, oh, I can't miss this class. I need to show up for others. But we learned some basic energy management, emotion management. We start implementing some practices so that you start gaining momentum in that
Mm.
direction, right? We develop a system, and in certain systems, the outcome is inevitable. So you can go from like feeling resentful, isolated, lost. That's
Right.
losing your purpose. What now? How am I going to spend my time? And then you go through this process, and on the other side, you get clarity. You feel inspired. You're dreaming again. You feel you're like literally choosing who you're going to be. It's like it's very intentional and it's energizing, and it's who do you want to be now? How are you going to spend your time? Like the world is your oyster.
I always say this all the time on this show is that, look, this is an opportunity for you to close this chapter
Yeah.
and recreate recreate or create whatever chapter you want moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get stuck in that past going, this is the life that I wanted. It's like, yeah, okay. And are we powerless over that? It happened.
Mhm.
And can we move forward? And I love that you're really addressing the self-esteem, because that is the very core, as we've talked about, excuse me, before the show started, is that the self-esteem really is at the very core of addiction. And we don't want to get to the point where we are having to deal with a more serious issue.
Yeah.
And divorce is very, very stressful. It's one of the most
Mm.
stressful things that people ever go through.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad that you haven't had to experience it, other than, well, you did as a child.
Yeah.
But just kind of as we're, so make sure that you go to this website and they can sign up. Now, is it something that you are starting every so many weeks, or how does that work?
There is a wait list
Okay.
right now. So, but I do have 2 free resources that they can download for free. It just gets you on my newsletter. You'll get my, podcast newsletter. But it puts you on the wait list for the next class. But the 2 free resources, it's a hypnosis recording to rebuild, start raising your level of self-esteem. The core principle of the class is that we only allow into our lives what we believe we deserve on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
So this hypnosis starts to retrain those negative beliefs. And then the other is a journaling exercise, and it's sort of built on these manifestation practices. It's like what you think about, you bring about. So it's a journal exercise. So you get both of those just by putting your name and email address in, and we get you on the wait list.
Oh, wonderful. And that they can find that at that website.
Yeah. Right now, that's all you can get is the
Okay.
free resources.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And then also, where do they find you on your podcast, One Day at a Time?
Yeah. So if you go to Sober Life School, that's kind of the hub for everything. But the podcast it's on YouTube if you want to see me and my guests talking like we are now, but it's Apple, Spotify, all the things.
Awesome. Okay. Well, and so thank you again so much, Arlina, for coming on and spending time with us. I know we could talk a lot longer, just because addiction is one of those things that people, I have found, don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Unless
and it's messy.
Yeah. And it's messy, and it can be frustrating because you're dealing with people that are in and out. Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. You know what I mean? Sometimes there are people like you that get into recovery and stay in recovery. So there's a lot of misunderstandings about how people that deal with addiction, or why they're even dealing, because it doesn't make sense to a normal person.
Right. Yeah.
Like my husband goes, why would you torture yourself like that? I'm like, I know, it doesn't make any sense. So, and it's the same thing with divorce too. I think, especially if you've been through it, you can identify with the pain that they're going through and the stress, but you just kind of wish that you could like paint the picture of how great it is afterwards when you get on the other side and you can create what you want.
There it is.
And that's the hope. And you just kind of go, okay, just trust me, one day at a time. That's what I always say to my client, one day at a time, just one day at a time, you're going to get on the other side of this. So, so here's my question for you is, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
That's really interesting. Here's what I'll say about that. My parents did the best they could. And what I was really grateful for is they were always very civil to each other. And that really meant a lot to me. They could have made my life so much worse by fighting and all that stuff. So I was really grateful that they did it that way. And I think if they had to do it, my mother always said I never regretted it, but she regretted how she did it sometimes. But I don't know. I'm really grateful to my parents that they were civil to each other.
Yeah, it made your life a little bit easier as children, because I don't think people really understand. We've talked about it on this podcast about how children are affected, and they really are affected. However, if adults are going to make that choice, can we make it easier for those kids to go through it?
I think the one thing my parents really did is they owned their truth with grace and dignity.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's first of all, I'm glad to hear that because I hear so many of the other stories.
Yeah.
So it's good to
Together.
hear that there is, and I do believe been divorced twice, and I've had one that was a lot more peaceful than the other one, and so I know it's possible.
Yeah.
That's out there, and really, to be honest with you, the first one, the reason why was because both of us were in addiction recovery. We both were taking ownership for ourselves, and for what we created, and we cried together and did our own radio show back then,
Oh, that's
um,
beautiful.
and really got to the point where we could just share love and appreciation for one another. And I do know that it's possible.
That's really inspiring.
Yes, yes. And actually that is on my website. If anyone wants to listen to that interview that we did all those years ago, it's called Healing from Divorce, or Healing After Divorce, I should say. It's at beckysampson.com. So you can go there as well. But thank you again, Arlina. And
Thanks
thank
for
you for
having
doing
me.
what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to tune into your podcast and get your resources as well. So make sure that you go there and get those, because it really does matter that we take our own personal responsibility for our own lives.
100%.
I love that part. Yeah. All right. Well, hang on one second. Thanks so much. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson. This has been an important topic. And I do hope that if you do have somebody in your life that is with addiction, there are so many addiction recovery programs out there, or if you're dealing with stress and you're finding yourself going into unhealthy behaviors, there is a lot of support and a lot of help out there, as well as I don't know about you, but I am going to go to Arlina's and get her downloads, because I also, doesn't matter how much work that I've done, there's always more work to be done. And I'm always very, very appreciative of the people in this industry to helping people through addiction recovery. But also, just as a reminder, if you are going through a divorce, I do have a free download, and that is legal terms. I want you to be educated as you're going through a divorce, or if you know someone that's going through divorce. Make sure you also check us on all the audio and platforms. Divorcing Strong, we're releasing 2 episodes a week, or you can go to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.